Yes, my good fellow. We're going to go home and I'm going to make a good lunch for you. How's that, eh?
True, nervous. Very, very dreadfully nervous I had been in Am, but why will you say that I am mad? Listen and observe how healthily, how calmly I can tell you the whole story. It is impossible to say how first the idea entered my brain, but once conceived, it haunted me day and night. Object there was none. Passion there was none. I loved the old man. He had never wronged me. He had never given me insult. For his gold, I had no desire. I think it was his eye. Yes, it was this. One of his eyes resembled that of a vulture, a pale blue eye with a film over it. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold. And so, by degrees, very gradually, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man and thus rid myself of his eye forever. Now this is the point. You fancy me mad. Well, madmen know nothing. But you should have seen me. You should have seen how wisely I proceeded. With what caution, with what foresight, with what simulation I went to work. I was never more kinder to the old man than during the whole week before I killed him. Oh, come, sir, you must have your breakfast. It's good for you. Try one more. And every night, about midnight, I turned the latch of his door and opened it, oh, so gently. And I opened it slowly, slowly. And I thrust in my head. The whole room was dark. I could not see the old man. He could not see me. My eyes got used to the darkness, and I could just make out his shape lying there on the bed. And I had with me a lantern, all closed so that no light shone out. And then I gradually opened the lantern to such a degree that a thin ray fell upon the vulture eye. And this I did for 7 long nights. Every night, just at midnight. But I found the eye always closed, and so it was impossible to do the work. But it was not the old man who vexed me, but his evil eye. And when the dawn broke, the morning came, I went boldly into his chamber and spoke courageously to him, calling him by name in a haughty tone and inquiring how he had passed the night. So you see, he would have been a very profound old man indeed to suspect that every night, just at 12, I looked in upon him while he slept. Upon the 8th night, I was more than unusually cautious in opening the door. A watch's minute hand moves more swiftly than did mine. Never before that night had I felt the extent of my own powers, of my sagacity. I could scarcely contain my feelings of triumph to think that there I was, opening the door little by little, and he not even to dream of my secret deeds or thoughts. I fairly chuckled at the idea, and perhaps he heard me, for I moved on the bed suddenly as if startled. Now you may think that I drew back, but no. I moved slowly, very, very slowly, so that I might not disturb the old man's sleep. It took me an hour to put my whole head within the door. so that I could see him as he lay up while he slept. And gradually, I opened the lantern slowly, very, very slowly, so that a single thin ray, like the thread of a spider, shot out and fell upon the vulture eye. It was open, wide, wide open, and I grew furious as I gazed upon it. I saw it with a perfect distinctness, all a dull blue with a hideous veil over it, so that it chilled the very marrow of my bones. But I could see nothing else of the old man's face or person, for I had directed the ray, as if by instinct, precisely upon the damned spot. Now I say there came to my ears a low, dull, quick sound, much as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I gasped for breath. It was the beating of the old man's heart. It increased my fury as the beating of a drum stimulates the soldier into courage. But even yet I refrained and stood still. I scarcely breathed. Meantime, the hellish tattoo of the heart increased. It grew quicker and quicker, and louder every moment. The old man's terror must have been extreme. It grew louder, I say, louder every moment. I thought the heart must burst. With a loud yell, I threw open the door and leaped into the room. He shrieked once only. In an instant, I dragged him to the floor and pulled the heavy bed over him. But for many minutes, the heart beat on with a muffled sound. This, however, did not vex me. It would not be heard through the wall. At length, it ceased. I removed the bed and placed my hand upon the heart. I held it there for many minutes. There was no pulsation. He was stone dead. His eye would trouble me no more. still think me mad, you'll think so no longer when I describe the wise precautions I took for the concealment of the body. The night waned, and I worked hastily, but in silence. First of all, I dismembered the corpse. I cut off the head and the arms and the legs. I then took up 3 planks from the flooring of the chamber and deposited all between the scantlings. I then replaced the board so cleverly, so cunningly, that no human eye, not even his, could have detected anything wrong. There was no blood stain to wash out, no blood spot of any kind. I had been too wary for that. The tongue had caught it all. When I had made an end to these labors, it was 4 o'clock, still dark as midnight. As the bell sounded the hour, there came a knocking at the street door. But I went down to open it with a light heart. For what had I now to fear? There entered 3 men who introduced themselves with perfect suavity as officers of the police. A shriek had been heard by a neighbor during the night. Information had been lodged at the office, and they, the officers, had been deputized to search the premises. I smiled. For what had I to fear? I bade the gentleman welcome. With a shriek I said was my own and a dream. The old man I mentioned was absent in the country. I took my visitors all over the house. I bade them search well. I led them at length to his chamber. I showed them his treasures, secure, undisturbed. In the enthusiasm of my confidence, I brought chairs into the room and desired them here to rest from their fatigues, while I myself, in the wild audacity of my perfect triumph, placed my own seat upon the very spot beneath which reposed the corpse of the victim. The officers were satisfied. My manner had convinced them. I was singularly at ease. They sat, and while I answered cheerily, we chatted of familiar things. All year long, I felt myself getting pale and wished them gone. My head ached, and I fancied a ringing in my ears. But still they sat, and still they chatted. The ringing became more distinct. It continued and became more distinct. I talked more quickly to get rid of the feeling, but it continued and gained definitiveness. Until at length, I found the noise was not within my ears. No doubt, I now grew very pale. I talked more quickly and with a heightened voice. Yet the sound increased. And what could I do? It was a low, dull, quick sound, much such as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I gasped for breath, and yet the officers heard it not. I talked more quickly, more vehemently, but the noise steadily increased. I arose and argued about trifles in a high key and with violent gesticulations. And yet the noise steadily increased. Why would they not be gone? I paced the floor to and fro with heavy strides, as if excited to fury by observations of the men. But the noise steadily increased. Oh, God, what could I do? I foamed, I raved, I swore. I swung the chair upon which I had been sitting and grated it upon the boards. But the noise rose over all and continually increased. It grew louder, louder, louder. And still the men chatted pleasantly and smiled. Still they sat and still they chatted. Why would they not be gone? Was it possible they heard not? Mighty God, no. They heard. They suspected. They knew. They were making a mockery of my horror. This I thought, and this I think. But anything was better than this agony. Anything was more tolerable than this duration. I could bear the hypocritical smiles no longer. I felt that I must scream or die. And now, again, hark! Louder! Louder!
Louder! Villains, I shrieked. Dissemble no more. I admit the deed. Tear up the blanks. Here, here. It is the beating of his hideous